Leibowitz, who dedicated this week's shiurim in memory of her father, Mordechai Mendel ben Abba וחיה Rייkel, and in observance of his yahrzeit, which was on Chavtet ben ניסן, April 11, Zechro Baruch. I've been absent for a while. I'm back after a trip of a week. It's great to be back, and it's good to join you again. Let's pick up where hopefully I remember where we left off, if my memory is not failing me. You know, as my wife says, I took my meds this morning, so hopefully they'll work.
Barry, as I told you, when I announced to the Kehillah that you had taken this trip, I described it as an act of youthful spontaneity. So it should be a segula for your youthful, energetic self.
It was an act of youthful spontaneity, I guess, but it was certainly spontaneous. Whether I'm youthful or not anymore is a different question. But in any event, Baruch Hashem, it worked out well. We went for a simcha. We surprised our daughter and our grandchildren and our son-in-law. And for those of you who are baseball fans, my son-in-law likened it to Kirk Gibson's home run in the World Series. So anyway, the last time
Bobby Thompson.
Correct. That's for Giants fans. Anyway, the last time we finished by discussing the fact that there are 39 avot melachot, which are derived from the things that the construction of the Mishkan, in other words, various things that were done in the Mishkan. As I said then, there are more than 39 things which are also on Shabbos, but they are broken down into categories which are avot and toladot, prototypical types of work, I'll call them, and subcategories of those prototypical types of work. Fundamentally, the 39 categories of work which we learned from the Mishkan break down into 4 categories. Category number 1 is 11 avot melachot, prototypical types of work, which represent the malachot, the tasks necessary to prepare the dyes to color the textiles in the Mishkan. The next group is 13 malachot, which represent the tasks necessary to create the various fabrics utilized as separations and or covers in the Mishkan. The next group, the third group, are 7 malachot employed to prepare the hides as the covers of the Mishkan. Tanning, we'll see what they are in a moment. And finally, the last 8 malachot represent the actual construction and the putting together of the Mishkan. In these shiurim, we are going to focus on the 11 malachot employed to prepare the dyes. On a certain level, I don't know how else to put this, but on a certain level, in Chazal, there is what I would call a bait and switch tactic employed in presenting these malachot, which I will refer to shortly. Let's briefly review the 39 malachot, what are known in halacha as the lamed tet malachot, and what they are. The lamed tet malachot are listed in the second Mishnah of the 7th parak of Shabbos, which is known as Klal Gadol, and the Mishnah states as follows: Avot melachot abayim chaser achad. There are 40 categories of work, less 1, meaning 39. There's a discussion in the Gemara why it's referred to in that way. We're not going to go into. And they are the following. As I said, 11 melachot. Hazoreya, one who plants. Vahachoreish, one who plows. Vahakotzer, one who reaps. Vahama'amer, one who groups them into sheaves. Vahadosh, one who threshes. Hazoreh, one who winnows. Haboreh, one who picks things out by selects the edible from the inedible waste from the edible. Hatochein, one who grinds. V'hamaraked, one who sifts. Halosh, one who kneads. V'ha'ofeh, and one who bakes. We're going to discuss that last thing shortly. The ofeh, the one who bakes. The second category is hagozeza tatzemer, one who shears wool. V'hamlabno, he whitens it. V'hamnapzo, he cleans out the wool, right? Hatzovo, he colors, he dyes the wool. Hatoveh, he weaves the wool. 1 second, I got lost here for a second. Whoops.
I just put up on the screen a list just so people could see it in front of them. If it's distracting you, I could take it down.
No, it's not this. Oh, now I understand what happened. Okay. Let me see. Okay, I got it. Okay, fine. Where are we up to? Hatzovo, one who dyes. Hatoveh, one who weaves. One who spins the wool, which is hamesech. V'oseh shtei batei nirin, one who stretches, one who constructs two meshes on a loom. Okay. V'horeg shnei chutim, one who weaves or embroiders two. V'apotzeya shnei chutim, and one who severs two threads. 1 second. Hakosher, one who ties. Hamartir, one who unties. V'atofeh shtei tfirot, and one who sews two stitches. Okay, that's the second category. The next category, I'm sorry, the last one on that is hakorea almanas lispor shtei tfirot, or he rips the garment or he rips the cloth, intending to stitch it with two stitches. In other words, in order, I guess, to line it up or whatever it is, he rips the cloth. The third category, which we said was to prepare the hides to cover the Mishkan, Hatzatzvi, he hunts, okay. Hashochato, he kills the animal, he shechts the animal. Hamafshito, he flays the skin. Hamocho, he salts the skin, in other words, as part of the tanning process. V'hamabeid et oro, and he smooths it. V'hamochako, v'hamachatcho, he removes the hair, and he cuts the skins. In other words, he makes them into skins, or he makes the hides into skins. And finally, the fourth category is hakotev shtei otiot. He writes two letters. Just as an interest, where did they write two letters? So this has to do with the krashim, the staves that set off the Mishkan, which were the boundary of the Mishkan. They had to match up. So on one stave you wrote, on one pole you wrote Aleph, and the next one you wrote Bet, so you knew. So hakotev shtei otiot, v'hamochek amanat lichtov shtei otiot, similar to what you do when you rip a cloth in order to line it up or to stitch it together again. Here you erase two letters in order to write two other letters. Haboneh, one who constructs. V'hasoter, one who breaks down things. Hamachabeh, one who extinguishes a fire. V'hamavir, one who lights a fire. Hamakeh b'patish, striking the final hammer blow, which is sort of interesting. But what it means is it's the gemar malacha, the end of the malacha. In other words, it's the finishing touch. Okay. Hamotzi me reshut l'reshut. This is the malacha of hotzah, where you take things from one reshut, let's say from your backyard into the common public area. Harei elu avot melachot abayim v'chaser achat. Those are the 39 melachot, say the Mishnah. Okay. Now, why do I say, when I discuss the first 11, which refers to those tasks encompassed within the task necessary to prepare the dyes, to color the fabrics, I said Chazal performed a sort of bait and switch with regard to these 11 melachot. Why do I say that? Because as I indicated to you, the last one is ha'ofeh. It should have been hamavashel. In other words, how do I prepare the dyes? I cut them, I this, I that, whatever, and I pour them generally into boiling water. That is the melacha of mevashel. It's not the melacha ha'ofeh. Ha'ofeh is baking. I bake bread. I bake cookies. That's what ha'ofeh. The Mishnah, however, instead of calling it bishul or hamavashel, calls it ha'ofeh. And the question is, why is ha'ofeh substituted for hamavashel? So the Gemara discusses the issue and says the following. V'ha'ofeh, it's a Gemara on Daf Ayin Daled in Shabbos. V'ha'ofeh, one who bakes. Omar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, Shavik Tana Didan, our Tana decided, or he made a presumption, let's say, Bishul Samamanim the Hava, the boiling of the various dyes, etc., that occurred in the Mishkan, the Nakat Ofa, he set that aside, and he said, he who bakes. Why? Tana Didan Sidura de Pas Nakat. He decided to set it up as the 11 steps, so to speak, of the steps of baking. And why did he do that? Why does he do that? Why wasn't he just satisfied to say it's hamavashel? So the Gemara goes on to say that the reason for the substitution was because since these malachot were equally applicable to baking, the Mishnah preferred to relate to a malacha, to something that we did that was far more common and less on a certain level esoteric. In other words, yes, somebody who makes dyes understands what he or she has to do, but the normal common person understands baking. He knows how to bake bread. So in order to make it less esoteric and make it more understandable as to what was Asur on Shabbos, the Tana of the Mishnah changed it from hamavashel or bishul to ha'ofeh. And he called these 11 malachot sidura de pas, which are the 11 steps in the order of making bread. It could be, I suggest to you, that we all have to remember that the Mishnah was originally oral, right? It was Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi later on who decided, for good reason, to write down what was the oral tradition, what was Torah Shabbal Peh. Until Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, it was orally transmitted. If you learn Gemara, you'll see sometimes that there are mnemonics in the Gemara. Why are there mnemonics in the Gemara? Why are there mnemonics? Because that's how they remembered things. They remembered, this, that, whatever. It could very well be, I suggest to you, that the Tana said, hey, this is kind of esoteric. Not everybody makes dyes. Not everybody dyes cloth. Not everybody knows how to prepare dyes. But if I tell them that the same categories of work refer to baking, they will understand that. It's something that happens every day. And therefore, he portrayed it as the 11 steps of making bread of Sidura the Pas. As a sort of follow-up to this notion that the Mishnah set forth the malachos in an easy order to remember, So they were presented in the Mishnah, not in the order that they were done and or accomplished in the Mishkan, but in the order that they would come up in life. In other words, what was most common? I bake. I make myself bread. Bread is a staple. I make bread. That was much more common than preparing hides. That was much more common than writing letters on boards, etc., etc. So it could very well be, or it is, that the Mishnah presents the 39 in the order that it felt was the most common usage on an everyday basis. Excuse me. Thus, as I said, food preparation is first. Second is preparation of clothing, right? Shearing, making wool, etc. Third, next comes writing and comes preparing the hides, etc., etc. And fourth is the actual construction. Last time, I also told you that there are various categories of halachot. The 39 which we mentioned are the avot halachot, the prototypical halachot that signify what happened in the Mishnah. And then there are derivatives of the avot, which are known as the toladot. Is there a practical distinction between an av malacha and a toladah? In other words, are they all the same, or there's a practical distinction? So the Gemara in Bava Kama says the following with regard to the distinction. Lo shna, it makes no difference, av chatas v'lo shna toladah chatas. In other words, in the time of the Mikdash, if I was over an av malacha, I was chayiv a korban chatas, and if I reached the Shabbat by doing a toladah, I was also chayiv a korban chatas. Lo shna av skila. If the punishment for having done the malacha on Shabbos was stoning, I did it b'mezid, right? V'lo shna tolada skila. And if one of the malachos had the punishment of skila, it didn't matter whether it was an av or a tolada. It didn't matter whether it was the primary malacha or a subsidiary malacha. Umay ika bein av latolada. If that's the case, then what's the difference between an av malacha and a tolada? Nafka mina, the difference, says the Gemara, is the ilu ovid shtei avos bahadei hadadi. In other words, I did two avos. I was choresh and let's take it. I was kosher and matir, right? I did two avos, right? If I did two avot at the same time, bahadei hadadi, if I could do that, inami shtei tolodot bahadei hadadi, or I did two toladot at the same time, mechayiv hakol chada v'chada. I am responsible. I have to bring a korban or whatever the punishment is on each one. In other words, if I did two avot melacha, I have to bring a korban on both. If I did two toladot, I have to bring a korban on both. V'ilu ovid tolad hidei. On the other hand, if I did an av malacha, okay, and then I did a tolada of that av malacha. Let's take an example. Let's say, I'll give you an example. Kotzer, I reap, right? I'm sorry, tochein, I grind, right? I have wheat and I'm grinding it, okay? A tolada of grinding is cutting something into very small pieces, right? One of the things that you have to be careful about on Shabbos is, what?
I'm sorry, chotech yirakot dak dak.
Dak dak, right? Is cutting things too finely, because cutting things too finely is a tolada of tochein, okay? So if I did tochein and I did and I cut things too finely. So I did the of tochein and the tolada of cutting it dak, right? Lo mechayev elachoda. Then it's in the same category, and I'm only chayev one korban or whatever the punishment. I'm not chayev for both. But if I did two separate categories, then I'm chayev on both. Okay, that's what the Gemara says. Then the Gemara goes on to say, the Gemara goes on to say, Hach dahavi b'mishkan chashiva. Those malachot which were done in the Mishkan are considered korelei of. Those are the lead categories, the prototypical of it. Hach delo havi b'mishkan. In other words, the subsidiary malachot, chashiva korelei tolada. They are called a tolada. Okay. Now, interestingly, the Rambam goes into great detail in Hilchos Shabbos to describe how his understanding of what this means. And he says the following. It's in Perek Zayin, halachos based through Vav. Kol elu hamalachot, v'chol shehu mi'inyanam, heim nikriyayim avos malachos. All of these malachos listed in the Mishnah, and everything that is like that, right, are considered avot malachot. Ketzat hu inyanam. What does it mean, says the Rambam, that they're of the same type? Echad hachoresh, I plow, right? O hachofer, right? The Mishnah doesn't say, the Mishnah only says choresh. But whether I plow or I dig or I make a furrow, right? Hareza of malacha. All three of those are considered an of malacha because fundamentally they are meyoto inyan. They are the same malacha. Shekol achas va'achas mehem chafira bakaka. They are all the same category. They're making holes in the ground. The inyan echad, and they're all the same. Similarly, somebody who plants seeds, or somebody who plants trees, or somebody who hold it, I'm losing my word. Somebody who, when you cut a branch and you attach something to the branch to make it grow.
Grafting.
Somebody grafts, right? Hazomer, right? Or somebody who plants vines. Kol elu avachatu, says the Rambam. The Rambam says those are all one malacha. Me'ovos of the inyan echadhu. They're all one category. Why? Why is he doing it? He wants something to grow. So anytime I do a malacha that causes something to grow, that's considered an of malacha. Somebody who reaps grain or beans, or somebody who picks grapes, Oha tamarim, somebody who picks dates. Oha mosek zaitim, right? We all see what mosek zaitim is. If you have an olive tree, when you knock the olives down, that's called mosek zaitim. Elu oha ora te'enim, or somebody who picks figs. Kol ela av malacha achate. They're all the same av malacha. The purpose of it is to reap something, is to take something out, is to detach something from its growth spot. And these are examples of what are all considered avot. In other words, avot are categories. It's not limited to just what's listed in the Mishnah. If it has the same purpose, it is an av melacha. Okay. Hatolada, says the Rambam. What is a subcategory of melacha? Hi ha-melacha hadoma la'av me'elu avot. It's something that's approximate to the av, but it's not exactly the same. Ketzat, for instance. Hamachatech et hayered ma'at ma'at levashlo. I cut up the greens or whatever it is, the vegetable, very finely in order to cook it. Hareza chayev, he's chayev. Shezu hamalacha tolada tchina. It's not grinding. I'm not grinding anything. I'm not taking the vegetable and putting it in a grinder. I'm simply cutting it. But it is a subcategory of tchina. It's not the exact same methodology, and it doesn't accomplish the exact same purpose, but it's a tolada. The one who grinds takes one item. Says the Rambam, when I grind something, I take one item and I make it into a whole bunch of items. I'm sorry. So anytime you do something like that, it's a tolada of tochein. But in other words, I don't have a grinding machine. I don't have anything. I'm just cutting things. And the end result is I ended up with the same way, but I didn't come about it in the same sort. In other words, when I pick grapes or when I pick grapes, it's the same difference as I cut down wheat. It's just a different way of cutting it, or it's just picking as opposed to cutting it. But this is a whole different process. This is an interesting. So I take milk, okay? I milk the animal, okay? And then I add rennet to it. Keva is rennet. I put it in the innards of the cow, right? I take the way you make cheese, right? Hareza chayav mishum toladat borer. What is borer? Borer is picking something out. In other words, I took the milk, I put it somewhere else, and I chose the milk from something else and made it into something. Shaharei hifrish hakum. By doing this, he separates. What did he do? He separates the natural liquids of the cheese or of the milk or the cheese, min hachalav. In other words, he's separating the liquid milk and making it into cheese. So he takes out the milk. That is considered borer. V'im gibno v'asur gevina chayev mishum boneh. Okay, so that he did that. Now, when he makes the cheese, he's chayev a second of malacha. Why? That's considered construction. You look at me and say, how is making cheese construction? So says the Rambam, shekol hamakabetz chelek el chelek v'davei kakol. When I take pieces and I assemble them, what do I do when I build something? I take a piece of wood, I put another piece of wood on it. So when I do that and I collect all the pieces, what am I doing? I'm taking pieces of dried out milk, of milk where the liquid has been, and I'm adding one on top of the other. So making cheese is a borer, because I take the liquid out of the milk and it reacts with the rennet. And then when the rennet causes it to become into cheese, a block of cheese, it's by taking the various pieces that are created and putting them together. And so every malacha, says the Rambam, every prototypical of malacha has a subcategory which we consider to be a tolada. And the Maggid Mishnah explains the Rambam even further. The Da, says the Maggid Mishnah, shekavanat rabbeinu hi shekol malacha shehi domeh la'av b'dimyon gambur. What is the Rambam saying, says the Maggid Mishnah? You should understand that every melacha, prototypical melacha that was in the Mishkan, that has something that is completely comparable to it, right? But is somehow divided from it, be'echut ha'pula or be'echut ha'nefra, hareza of kamoto. If it is an exact copy, but just a different process, then it's considered a aval malacha hadomel lo b'miktzat. But if the malacha only is partially comparable to the av malacha, zuhi nikrei tolada, then it's considered a tolada. V'hamashal b'zeh says, just in case you didn't understand, the Rambam says the Maggid Mishnah understand. Hakotzer, one who reaps grain, v'habotzer, one who picks grain. Shehem b'dimyon gamur ela shachalukim haniflim. They are exact. They get to the exact. They do the exact same thing. I detach whatever it is from its root, right? I detach the wheat from its root. I detach the grape from its vine, right? That is considered, they are completely identical, and therefore they are both considered the av malacha of kotzer. V'chein hazoreya v'hanoteya v'chein hachoresh v'hachofer, right? It doesn't matter whether I dig it up or I plow it or I somehow make a furrow. Shehem chaluke eichut hapula. Avahem b'dimyon gamur, says the Maggid. The end result or the process, what I'm doing, the end result is the exact same. They're all considered one category of malacha. Says the Maggid, when it's only slightly comparable. Could go in hamachatechet hayerek. I'm not grinding the yerek, I'm cutting it. Right? She'eno domel l'tchina, rak b'heyaseit miguf echad gufim rabim. The only comparison in how I get to the process is that I end up with more pieces than I started with, but the process is totally different. Afal pi she'atchina meshana haguf harishon legamri, ve'en achituchem, zohi tolada. What happens when I grind something? The initial kernel or whatever it is, no longer, it's not there. What happens when I cut a vegetable? I know what I had. I now have a cut-up vegetable. It's not like I got flour, which didn't exist before. When after I grind it, I got flour, which is a totally different thing than I started with. In the vegetable, I just have a bunch of pieces. So therefore, says the Maggid Mishnah, that is considered a tolada. So next time we'll continue, and I think with this, we can start to discuss the halachos of Bishul next time. Please God, on Wednesday afternoon. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy.
Feel free to unmute yourselves. Just two quick things. I'm sure we're going to get to it eventually, but it's just striking why it says to extinguish fire before it says to light the fire.
We'll get to that. Okay.
We'll get to that. Okay, that's a little teaser. And I wanted to let everybody know, in case you forgot, we launched a YouTube channel dedicated to these shiurim, so that if you or your friends miss a shiur, or if you want to go back and review a shiur, I'm trying, with a little encouragement from my friend from Chelmsford, to upload them conscientiously, and so that they'll be available. And in that way, we all have a chelik v'nachala in creating a legacy for our rabbi.
Oh, God. Okay.
Jay's blaming me for missing shirim. Jeez, tough crowd.
No, I'm going to tell you a story, Akiva. I listened. Jay sent me, somebody sent me Hespedim for David Soloveitchik. Did you send it to me, or to my nephew, to my son-in-law Ben?
I don't think I did.
Okay, my son-in-law Ben sent it. Anyway, I listened to one from some Talmud of Rav David Soloveitchik who said the following, Akiva. He said, I was a very good boy. I didn't miss. I used to come to the base medrash all the time. And Rav David Soloveitchik had the custom of coming into night seder to see who was there. And I was always there. And one night, there was a shir that he either wanted to listen to or was a memory somewhere in some other yeshiva. He picks himself up and he goes to the other yeshiva. And the next night, Rav David Soloveitchik comes in and he calls him over and says to him, he says, and there were guys who missed night Seder all the time, and he was one of the good boys, right? And Rav David Soloveitchik says to him, where were you last night? And so he explains to him that there was this shir that he wanted to hear, or he had to go, whatever it was. So then he says, sort of a little trepidatiously, he says to Rav David Soloveitchik, he says to him, I don't understand. I'm here every night. Why did you pick me to ask the question to? So he looked at him, he said, because you're here every night. And therefore, when you weren't here, it made an impression on me. And I wanted to know where you were. So you shouldn't take it as, you should take it as a compliment. So if Jay is making this is your compliment, Akiva.
Yes. Thank you, Chief Gabbai.
Good afternoon,
I will
everyone.
see you later, too.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Barry.